The 2021-22 Houston Rockets. Why are they so bad? It's been almost 20 games in the 21-22 NBA season, and this year's Houston Rockets are on pace to easily become the worst NBA team of all time, with a record of 1-16. And no, I don't think anyone had them as contenders this year, or even a playoff seed, but even if they're trying to rebuild, they shouldn't be this bad, should they? Surprise player Christian Wood, who averaged just under 20 and 10 last season, has been the same player this year. Kevin Porter Jr. has come back from the Cavaliers, giving him away to solidifying himself as an NBA talent. They got their guy in the draft who they expect to not only become their next franchise player on the floor, but lead their brand into the new, younger generation off of it. And they have a potential Hall of Fame point guard, early 30s, just sitting on the bench, healthy and being paid $41 million in John Wall not to play. As far as talent goes, shouldn't they be more competitive? With a market like Houston, Texas, the NBA needs the Rockets to be good. Now, it's not unusual for a team to have rebuilding years, and yes, during those years, the process looks anything but promising. But to have only won one game all season with the talent they have is surprising and can't be encouraging to their fans, seeing as a superstar coming along to save them is highly unlikely. Maybe Ben Simmons? When you see a team have this bad of a start, it makes you ask a lot of questions. Is second-year head coach Stephen Silas really adequate in that role? Has their young rookie and highest draft pick since Hall of Famer Yao Ming shown enough signs that he's a player you can build around? Should they use Christian Wood, who is putting up solid numbers but doesn't affect winning, in a trade for a more sure future in draft picks? With that said, is the team tanking this year in hopes of landing next year's hype Paolo Banchero? No way are they waiting on a college freshman who hasn't even proven himself there yet as a reason to throw away the season, right? Or maybe this is just a typical rebuild year any franchise that lost 3 Hall of Fame players in the last 3 years, 4 if you count John Wall, have to go through on the road back to prominence. Whatever the problem is for the Rockets this season, it's been tragic to watch, knowing the opportunities they had for this not to be the case this soon. 3 reasons the Rockets went from champions in the 90s to contenders right at the doorstep in the 2000s and as recently as 2018 to easily the worst team in the league this year. What's stunning the Houston Rockets' growth? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. In the 90s, the Houston Rockets finally broke through the wall and won back-to-back championships behind their greatest player of all time, Hakeem Olajuwon, who behind his lead, they've never had a losing season. Transition years trying to find the foundation for the next phase saw a failed Charles Barkley addition at the end of his career, a failed guard attack offense led by Steve Francis and Cuttino Mobley, to finally a ray of hope in the highly skilled but fragile big Yao Ming and superstar but also often banged up Tracy McGrady, only led them past the second round one time from 2002 to 2011. Their most recent savior was a highly talented, creative, bucket-getting James Harden that even though he lacked the basketball IQ and ability to play with other superstars long-term, he was the best they had in a long time. The fortunes continued for the Rockets when Chris Paul was added to the lineage, but injuries and chemistry robbed them of their potential. In a last-ditch effort to not only capitalize off their star James Harden in the prime of his career, they added another IQ god, Russell Westbrook, which resulted in a second-round defeat and Russell out in just 1 year. James Harden forced his way out during the 2021 season, and here's where we are in the 21-22 season, 1 win, 16 losses. Why? Stunt number 1, losing Chris Paul. Because this is about how the Rockets became so bad, let's not go any further back than the Rockets' tenure of Chris Paul. Losing Chris Paul in 2019 was a huge building block to this year's team being so bad. but the Houston Rockets were blinded. James Harden in 2018-19 was having one of the best individual offensive seasons of all time, averaging 36 points on a career second-best 11 free throws a game. Although this wasn't at all abnormal for Harden, who had found his way since the day he stepped foot in Houston. He was 29 years old in 2018-19 and at the beginning of his prime. This made the Rockets invest greatly on his happiness overall and caused them to in some way lose pieces that could have been just as important, Chris Paul being the biggest piece. Mind you, this was before Chris Paul performed miracles in Oklahoma City, taking the 1920 team to the playoffs when no one saw that coming, and most thought CP3 was sent to OKC to roll over and die on a Hall of Fame career. This was also before he went to Phoenix and took the non-playoff the previous year's Suns all the way to the finals behind his leadership and timely plays. He tied his career high in 10.7 assists, and had he not been injured again, the Suns may have been champions. Back in 2019, the Rockets didn't believe this was possible and traded him to OKC for the only superstar at the position that matched salary cap-wise Russell Westbrook. Paul on the Rockets showed his dominance no better than the 2017-18 season, taking them to the Western Conference Finals and almost defeating defending champion Golden State, who they had down 3-2. In that Game 5, he injured his hamstring and was out the rest of the series. With Harden at the helm, they lost back-to-back games and were eliminated. Golden State beat them again in 2018-19, with Chris Paul dealing with nagging injuries still. Houston had seen enough and traded him to OKC for Westbrook. Waiting for a healthy Chris Paul to give it one more go was the right move the team didn't take. They also gave up 2 future first-round picks and second-round picks for the worst fit of James Harden's Rocket career. Stunt number 2, Mike D'Antoni. That leads me to this. The Westbrook trade didn't have to be as bad as it turned out. In his lone season with the team, Westbrook and James Harden played well enough to make it to the semifinals, where unfortunately they met the eventual champion Lakers, who Russ plays for now. If I'm not mistaken, he hated Kevin Durant for doing just that, but that's not here nor there. Midway through Russ's only season, Mike D'Antoni decides to experiment with the team and trade away their best rim protector, 6'10" Clint Capella, in favor of attempting to prove small ball could be more than just exciting. Capella fit amazingly with James Harden, and I've always thought they could be a great duo when Capella got older and had more experience. He was also a good role guy for Chris Paul and Russ. There was no need to experiment with the team in the middle of the season and put your team at a disadvantage. But this was D'Antoni, always all in and always swinging for the fence. The Rockets made the playoffs and the second round that year, but it was clear this small ball team and idea wasn't a championship contender going forward. Before that season, James Harden requested a trade. Stunt number 3, destroy and rebuild. And finally, I think the Rockets are now this bad because it's just the process. When you begin to lose like they have been, sometimes the only option is to break it all down and rebuild. After losing surefire Hall of Famers Harden, Westbrook, and Paul, the team is stuck with an aging, injury-prone point guard as of recent, who still is the team's best player, but one they aren't sold on, so asked him not to play in hopes they can trade him to a team of his choice. John Wall is being paid handsomely this year to do nothing, and I think he should be playing at this point, as he can at least lead these young guys and teach them the ways of the league and how to grow. He can't do that effectively from the sidelines. They drafted Jalen Green in the 2021 NBA draft as the second pick in hopes he become what neither Yao Ming, Tracy McGrady, Russ, Harden, or CP3 became at some point. While he's good, he's way too inconsistent at the moment to tell if that's even possible. But what he does have is he wants to be that, fearless and made in the mold of a superstar. Losing at this pace this year will give them the best chance to draft Duke freshman sensation Paolo Banchero, but even then, that's not a sure thing. Kevin Porter Jr. looks promising, but not a point guard they want him to be leadership-wise and getting others involved without being one of the league's leaders in turnovers. All in all, the Rockets are a terrible basketball team this year that all seem to have separate agendas. Porter wants to prove he can not only stick in the NBA, but play point guard, and I don't think he's a good option at the position going forward. On a championship contender, he'd come off the bench. For the disappointing 2022 Rockets, he's a starter and turnover machine. Christian Wood is a double-double big, but doesn't affect winning and doesn't get his points without playing like a wing. He's their most attractive trade piece, but who coming in is going to help this situation? With Wall clearly not in the plans, the Rockets seem to be in for a few down seasons until they figure it out. Hopefully they can soon, because right now, they're on pace for being the worst team of all time. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.